Hello and welcome to A Day in the Life. I'm your host, Darren Bloomfield. Joining me today is Chris Stanley. Welcome, Chris.
What's going on, Darren, man? I'm excited to be here and I'm a little jealous of the shirt. I have to say, I didn't get one in the mail. I have to get with Tony and be like, what in the world's going on here? But I'm
Yeah,
excited to be here today.
no, we only had four of them made, so you might be able to get them in the next shipment, but they're definitely unique. But yeah, this is the first time we had Insurance Nerd shirts, and they're on our website, probably somewhere on LinkedIn. But yeah, no,
Typ-
that's great.
Typically, when I do podcasts or videos for my company, I'm wearing my iPass shirt. It's a blue long sleeve Columbia shirt. It's got a logo, but there's like three in existence. I own two of them. So yeah, you can't exactly get those out of. So I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, definitely. So where are you? Can you kind of talk about your setup here? So some of the lifestyle design you've been able to capture here.
Sure. So right now I'm in Montana, near Helena, Montana. We just left Glacier National Park yesterday. We're headed towards Yellowstone National Park, and right now I'm operating off of Starlink internet. Darren was asking, like, how are the world are you broadcasting from wherever you are? We have Starlink internet, so we satellite. As long as you have an open sky, you can usually get it to work. But I work remotely all the time. I'm never in an office, and it's either from my sailboat or my school bus. I'm traveling around. So that's kind of where I'm at in my life right now. Not where most adjusters end up, or even where we start, but it's something I love.
Yeah, no, definitely. So kind of that freedom and flexibility of you working for yourself. Like obviously, I mean, I think now I'd say maybe I'm a little spoiled with that, or recent college grads too, of kind of like coming in during COVID. Like some people are
Right.
like you're so lucky not to go into the office, like 5 days a week, or wow, you only go in like 1 or 2 days a week, or like kind of something like that. Like it's definitely a different world to be like entering the workforce now. But it's
Yeah.
cool to know that people have been doing this, successfully for a while now. So like how do you think that COVID or like the aftermath of that, did you like are more of your friends kind of flexibility now, or like has just been a learning curve for them? Or
Well, I think as far as big picture, right? I think for those who don't know, because we kind of just jumped right into it, I mentor insurance adjusters, specifically independent insurance adjusters. So, independent means you're just your own company. And it means that you're subcontracted out on a per claim basis typically. And so you're basically running your own business all the time. And that means you don't know where your next paycheck's coming from, and you don't know um, how much work there's going to be next year or this year. So it's really a lot of freedom and flexibility, but a lot of burden. Whereas what you're talking about with COVID, when COVID happened, a lot of staff adjusters, from what I've seen on the outside looking in, were cut, especially after COVID and kind of the government interventions, kind of laxed up. The company started laying off a lot of in-house staff on adjusting, and they seem to go more to the independent adjusting side, outsourcing work. But yeah, it's great now that normal jobs, I say normal, right? Jobs that you're not living on a school bus or a sailboat or traveling around the country, they're allowing you to work from home much more. I think that's fantastic. You still couldn't get me to clock in 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, even from my school bus. It's not going to happen. I'm never going to work traditional hours. I'll probably work longer than that, harder than that, but someone's going to be 11 at night. So yeah, I think it's a great change. I think it's long needed, especially in the insurance industry. There's no reason most people need to be in office. They can just be sitting at home, handling claims, closing files, writing estimates off of photos, especially. But I think we're just going to continue to see more of that trend on the adjusting side, where it's either AI is being brought in to assess the damages, or it's going to be an IA, so it's AI or IA who's going to be brought in to assess the damages, because it doesn't make sense to have a staff person sit in office and then have to go in the field if you don't have that much volume in the field. And I think they're trying to get away from that field volume. So adjusting standpoint, I think that's kind of what we're seeing after COVID and where I think we're headed.
yeah, so as far as just kind of explain the staff adjuster, I assume it's kind of like within a carrier, like working with the carrier. So when
Yeah,
Yeah. So, and what do you say is kind of like the volume is in like case handling or how many cases each person would be handling? Like, is that like, is your contact at a carrier the staff adjuster, or who do you kind of talk to at the insurer?
You got it right on. Really, it's a, there's adjusters and then there's appraisers, and you'll hear those terms kind of mixed up a lot. And for someone who's not familiar with the claim side, an appraiser writes the estimate or determines a value of something. An adjuster writes the check. Now, an adjuster can also write an estimate and also can determine value, but ultimately the important part of adjusting and why you need a license is that power of the pen to say on behalf of an insurance carrier, we are covering this loss, and that's what that check represents. Whereas a lot of times we as independents are actually operating as especially on the auto side of the industry, we're operating as an auto damage appraiser. We're actually just going out making recommendations to the inside adjuster or claim handler to say, hey, it looks like it's going to cost about $7,237 to fix this vehicle. And then they're like, okay, I have no idea how to write an estimate or what I'm looking at, but I'm taking your recommendation, and that inside adjuster or staff adjuster is writing a check and saying, we are going to cover this loss. We deemed it, under the policy, it's covered, and now writing the check. And that's what kind of seals the claim to say the insurance company's stepping in. But up until that point, our role is very much just assessing the value of the damage or the value of the property that was damaged.
So what's kind of the timeline, or when are you being brought in, as far as like, is the carrier, like the staff adjusters, kind of giving you like a caseload or kind of assigning a case, or like who's in this area, and like how do you kind of
even more confusing than that, Darren? I wish it was that it made that much sense. It doesn't. It's the insurance industry. It can't make that much sense, right? But because I think back in the day of handwriting estimates, Polaroids being mailed off, things of that nature, independents were in direct contact a lot more with carriers than they are now. Now there's almost like staffing agencies called IA firms, independent adjusting or appraisal firms, depending on the role, that are actually out there searching for all of us independents and being a network that a carrier can just say, hey, that's who we send these claims to, and they determine on an individual basis where those claims go. So most of the time, that inside adjuster isn't saying, hey, Chris over here in Florida is handling this claim. They're saying ACD, SCA, Sedgwick, companies like that, handle this claim for us. We don't have anybody in the field, and then they did from there. So it's like a staffing agency.
Mm-hmm. So with kind of like the mobility that you have working from like a school bus, like if you're kind of traveling to, a job site, or I guess depending on what you're adjusting, if it's mostly personal lines or some commercial stuff, like you might have to actually be on site. So do you think that mobility, I don't know if you're like sleeping in the school bus too, but are you actually saving money by not getting a hotel?
Well, I am a bad example of or a good example, however you want to look at it. I am not the normal example. Yeah. Okay. So I live on a sailboat and a school bus full time with my wife and 3 kids. We travel, we're nomads. It started as we were adjusters, catastrophic adjusters particularly. It got us into traveling. We loved to travel. We would go, a hailstorm would happen in Dallas, Texas. We get a phone call. We want you to go here, make X amount of dollars per day. And we go out and work for 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it is, handling the influx of claims that would come in. And then they'd be like, all right, you're done. And okay, we make a good amount of money, and then we just go travel some more. And then as I started my company, IA Path, we started training new adjusters how to get started. I said, I'm done going in the field. I want to teach people how to do this because it changed our world. It opened us up to new opportunities we didn't even realize were possible. And so I got so excited about that aspect. Like, man, if Darren only knew that this industry existed and it could get started, I would love to see his excitement in that, right? And help him get through that. So once we made that shift to starting a company and helping other people get started, that's where we went full nomadic. Like, there's no reason we're not covering an area or even going to catastrophic deployments. I have 600 adjusters who are apprentices underneath me and my other mentors. So I'm literally running that company from wherever I am. But that's my job now.
So are you getting kind of contacted from like a carrier and then you're kind of like deploying, these apprentices to these areas, or how do you kind of manage that?
Well, what we do is we say, okay, Darren, you want to get into this industry, you want to become an independent adjuster, you want to write auto claims, great. That's our specialty is auto. We find that it's a great way for people to get started, kind of get their foot in the door. And we say, okay, we're going to teach you the skill set. Licensing is one thing, and I know there's a lot of agents that listen to the insurance nerds. Having an agent license doesn't mean you know how to sell a policy or take care of a customer, right? Same on the adjusting side. Just because you have an adjuster's license doesn't mean you actually know how to do the day-to-day job. We teach the day-to-day job, and we say, all right, Darren, I'm going to, mentor you, show you how to do the job, show you how to use all the softwares, get you ready, and then introduce you to 40 companies that we work with that know our curriculum, that know our standard of what we hold. And once you're ready, I'll introduce you to them and get the 2 to 5 year experience requirement waived. So a lot of companies will not accept new people because they just can't. They have contracts. They need to know they know how to do the job. And just if anybody can raise their hand, well, then their work product's going to be bagged. So there's really high standards to getting started. And we help get those standards waived because we test and vet so thoroughly.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense, especially just kind of with insurance now, or last few years. Like I went to a risk management insurance major, like a business school that had that program in school. So I think what you're kind of saying is like that pipeline. Like first, like I think you said is kind of a big discovery for you is after working in the job. Like wow, people would love this job. There's so much flexibility to it. How do I get more people into kind of this role?
Right.
Then creating kind of like that curriculum, but it's also like people want to know that their investment of time, money, and energy of going to these programs is going to pay off somewhere or another. If there's actually a job at the end of this, a career.
Right.
Going.
It's scary. I mean, it's scary starting any business, much less one that's as convoluted or confusing as independent adjusting. I mean, you understand, hey, Darren, you want to open up a coffee shop, $500,000 in equipment, building, employees, and you're like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to get a job at a coffee shop, right? I'd make more money that way. Well, as an independent adjuster, you're kind of like, well, what are my expenses? What is my overhead? So it's not as simple as here's how to do the job. It's here's how you run a successful business as an independent adjuster in addition to that. So that's why we felt mentorship had to be such a big part of it, because it wasn't enough to train. There's a lot of adjuster training companies, but we said, no, we have to be an adjuster mentorship company, because once our people graduate, we don't kick them out into the world the way you traditionally experience in training or college. We say, okay, contact these companies and then come back with your questions. So as they're getting claims and as they're closing claims and they get stuck and they're faced with a new situation they've never seen, you don't have a manager like you do at a carrier. You have us. You turn to us and say, helpline, hey, I got this claim. I have no idea how to handle it. And then we step in and we say, okay, based on our experience, this is how we would handle it. Double check your guidelines and all that fun stuff, but make sure that this is how I would handle that situation if I was in your shoes. And so that's how our programs worked, is that these new people who go out into the world, they actually have this secret weapon of us, the mentors, and the 500 other adjusters who are in the same program. So they're all kind of like a hive mind answering each other's questions like, oh, this is how I have to deal with it. Oh, I found out this. Oh, look at this cool website we found. And all of a sudden, all our graduates look like rock stars, because they are. But it's because they have this full support system behind it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, especially that community aspect of like you said. I think some other programs were just like, all right, get the job, and then we did our part, and you're kind of done and move on to the next person to like just keep churning it. But I think that's great of having that like support system and community after it. But to kind of set up that like collaborating with like the insurance carriers, or like that there is going to be, like there is, like you said, kind of like your curriculum is able to waive like a years of experience requirement, which is great. How are those conversations initially with like these carriers, or whoever's hiring, like the human resources departments, to kind of like, yes, there's jobs, and yes, we would want them to know this and this. Like how do you line it up initially?
Oh, it was a lot of no's, let me tell you. When we got started, it's been 6 years now we've been doing this. And I started just with a podcast, right? Hey, here we go. I started with a podcast, just teaching people that auto claims was even a thing. Nobody knew. They all knew about property. So Hurricane Katrina happens. What does everybody think? All the houses. But most people don't think about the cars, or don't think about the cars that get in wrecks every day. So the big money is in property or residential on the independent adjusting side. So a lot of people ignore auto. And so I was like, well, no one's talking about auto. And that's what I did. And I had a great run. I'm in it, been in it now 13 years. I think it's a great life. Why are more people not considering auto? It's less competitive, it's easier. So I just started talking about it on a podcast. And then, after a little bit, all of a sudden people start to know who Darren actually is. You're nobody. You start hosting a podcast and people start talking with you. So I got contacted by these IA firms saying, oh, I think it's great what you're doing. That's so cool. Can I be on your podcast? And try to get more people to come to our, on our rosters and handle claims for us. And we're like, sure. And then I'm like, hey, look, we have a curriculum. I created this online course. Dream is passive income, right, Darren? So you create an online course, videos, 10 video module or whatever it was at the time, put people through it. And then the company's like, no way. I'm not accepting your people. I don't know if they actually know how to do the job. And so I actually found a message, a private LinkedIn message from 2017 the other day that said, was me asking somebody inside a company like, hey, can you get me in contact with recruiting? I want to be able to talk with them. And the response was, absolutely not. We won't work with your new people. And I was in 2017. Now, that was the first company who signed on, but it took over a year of conversations, and it took understanding what they really needed, because we're not talking to the carriers. We're talking to the IA firms who are servicing the carriers.
Yeah.
So the carrier, a big company is saying, hey, I need you to find somebody in Arkansas to look at this car. And then they have to find it. So they have incentive to take on newer people if they can do the job. But if that new person does a terrible job, what's that do? That's a millions of dollar account with XYZ insurance company, and they don't trust you to handle their claims anymore because one new person ruined it for you, right? So they were like, well, Chris, we got to know they know how to do this. You're going to put your neck on the line for this? And I'm like, oh, I thought I was just giving videos now. If my neck's on the line, I got to actually know these people. And that's what they wanted, was we need you to know them, know they're responsible, know they can close claims properly. And we said, how can we do that? And so over the last 6 years, it's been a continual process of improvement of like, okay, let's do this. And they give me feedback, these companies, and say, hey, Chris, this guy is struggling with this. Maybe you should include that in your curriculum. And then we'll go add another video, improve it in our curriculum. And we can update 600 people in real time and say, hey, guys, just so you know, when dealing with this Tesla or whatever it is, this is how they want the situation handled. And so we're able to make big changes in our industry with our students just through a single post.
Yeah, no, it's huge. Like, it's very real time feedback, and then as you said, the passive income must be pretty nice. But where do you think that you're finding most of these new applicants, or like, is there kind of a platform or word of mouth that most, like, what's the background of most people, and how are they kind of finding you before they come into IA?
Most people that get interested in our industry, I'm kind of doing a bait and switch. I'll just be straight up. So everybody comes in this industry to hear about property, like I was saying, because the big money's in property, and they'll talk with someone and say, "Here, oh, I made 70 grand in 3 months or something crazy," right? And it's like, okay, great. But the likelihood of you doing that, one, getting the shot, two, executing it, three, you being the one to make 70 grand in 3 months or whatever the crazy number you hear is like slim to none. It's like gambling, okay? Even worse than it's like playing the lottery, okay? And so I call it the adjuster lottery. So what I do is I go out on podcasts, I write books. We have 9 different books in our insurance adjuster series on Amazon, and we have 2 podcasts, and we're just content marketing really, to say, hey, look, if you're having trouble getting started, we can help you get work. And that's what our company's slogan is we help you get work. Like, that is our mission. That's what we do. And how we do that is through auto claims. And we say, hey, everybody's lining up for the Hurricane Katrina property storm, but there's literally 20,000 licensed adjusters, probably more in the whole US, but at least 20,000 trying to get on this storm. So a few things have to happen for you to get work. One, there has to be a storm with a lot of damage, and it has to actually make landfall. And that means if you're 2,000 or 20,175 number in line, all those other people, if they have more experience than you, have to get work before they're probably going to take a risk on you, the new person. Mm-hmm. And the likelihood of you actually being that big number is really small. So let's put the odds in your favor. 2 people got in a wreck at Walmart yesterday, fender bender, and there's like 6 other people in Arkansas that handle daily auto claims. Would you rather compete against 20,000 or 6 to get started? And so we help people break in the industry that way. And that's kind of been our message, is like, hey, let's get work. Let's get working. Let's build a business. Let's not swing for the fences right away. Let's get established. Let's build that trust up, and then your skill set up as well. Because if you can handle an auto claim, property is not that different. It's got more complexity to it, but you've got the fundamentals of scheduling, of how to handle a claim, with talking to an insured, showing up to their house. All those nerves are gone, and now you can just go out there and be a rock star.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's huge, is like, you need experience and credibility to get more experience to get these opportunities. But right. Not only are you kind of leaving that trail of breadcrumbs, or leaving that content for people to self-educate themselves, you're also then matching them up with these opportunities that are out there, kind of helping them change the way that they think about where they need to go to as you say, get work.
It's a long game. It's a really long game, Darren. It takes the average life cycle that we found when we really talk to the people who sign up for our mentorship program. It's not a low-cost program. I mean, where are you going to get a certification? Or, think of CPCU. It's not cheap. You can't get anything that's worth anything that takes involvement and gets credibility in any industry without investing money. But it takes most people from finding out about what we do, hearing on a podcast, whether it's like this or on our own, to purchasing about a year. It's like a customer life cycle of about a year. So, I mean, it's a really long time of educating and building up trust with that customer, because they think all internet things are a scam, and a lot of things are, or a lot of things are not worth what you think they are. And so they want to get they want that reassurance that, like, this is something that's real. It's a weird sounding industry. You're charging a lot of money. Are you really going to be there when I need you? And so a lot of it's just building trust, being human beings in the process.
Mm-hmm. So what do you kind of think with companies like yours or some other ones? Like, would you say this is anything like kind of like disruption from kind of like an Insurtech in a way? Or like, do you see kind of like, how do you see Insurtechs kind of disrupting how IA firms kind of are handling or recruiting in this way?
Well, the sun's disrupting our camera a little bit here, so if you need me to move, just let me know, Darren. I don't want to give you guys a bad experience. But as far as Insurtech goes, I consider us Insurtech because we're using technology to train virtually. We do nothing in person. Okay, so everything's done online. We're using everything that's state of the art that internet marketers are using. Whereas if you go to a traditional adjuster training school before COVID, that was like unheard of. You don't do that, right? COVID made everybody disrupt. We were doing it for 4 or 5 years before COVID ever happened. And so, yeah, I believe it's somewhat Insurtech because it's Insurtech training. Tell Brian Falchuk and Rob Galbraith that, so maybe they'll have me on their podcast, right? Insurtech. But seriously, like, at the heart of it, though, it's not technology, it's relationships. I mean, that's insurance in general. Our training's no different. We have a relationship to people who want to hire adjusters and give them claims. And then we have relationships with the students who want to learn how and need help knowing how to handle claims. And we're bridging that gap. Yeah, we're using technology to do it, so it's Insurtech in that way. But at the heart of it, it's really a relationship. There's no way someone can get certified to our program without us interacting with them. There has to be writing estimates, grading their estimates, giving them feedback. I mean, it's a lot involved. It's very involved because we found that's what was needed, not necessarily what we wanted. Like I said, I wanted the passive income of 10 videos and I'm just getting checks in the mail and I never have to talk to anybody. That's not the reality. The reality is we have a whole team of people helping people day in and day out, answering their questions to help them get their claims closed.
So what do you kind of see happening in the future of with the carrier itself kind of using that IA firm to service these open claims and adjust them? Do you see like carriers start to kind of outsource more of those capabilities or to reduce kind of at the carrier like how many people are in claims, or what do you kind of see? Because like you've made it very efficient and
Mm-hmm.
effective to kind of set it up how you did it, and that's, I mean, disrupted to some extent, but like do you see kind of that trend continuing like outside of independent adjusting firms, or where do you see that kind of going?
I don't see carriers continuing to train adjusters to the level that they have. I mean, if you think of the really big companies like Progressive and Geico with the cars, Liberty Mutual, they have big training facilities. The days of that, they still have it already. So they're going to continue to do it and utilize it. But I already know some of the carriers have set up their own virtual training things that can assimilate out information to their people in a hurry in a virtual environment. And I believe that's where it's going, but it doesn't make sense to train adjusters the way we've always have, online or not, when the carriers, what they really want is AI. What they really want is nobody in the field because it's way less cost, it's quicker, closes the claim, which in theory, if you have a quick claim, it's a happier customer typically. So the cycle time is so important. So AI is very desirable that way. But what ends up happening with all insurance is the human factor gets entered in, the empathy is needed. They want to talk to somebody. They wish they had someone to look at in the face and say, hey, this is how the process works. So I think because of that, because we are human beings and we want some interaction, same with the agents, we're going to continue to have a role. But I think because that role is going to continue to diminish certain things we do in the field, it'll, like I said earlier, it's either going to be AI or it's going to be IA over the next 5 to 10 years. And I mean, Brian Falchuk and Rob are way more authorities on the future, right, than I am, or I could ever hope to be. But I believe that from our standpoint, I see IAs, independent adjusters, being used as the backstop to AI to say, we don't need a staff of 500 guys across the country or even gals across the country. We'll just hire somebody when we have that one-off claim in the middle of Timbuktu. We'll just hire somebody when we need them to check up on the shop or contractor. And I believe that is going to be the role of IAs for the long term, is we're going to be, looking at the Tesla report and are we really responsible for this claim? Was it our car that got in a wreck? Was it really our system that malfunctioned? I think it's going to change what we do, but I think we're still going to be there.
Yeah, and then kind of what you're saying, like these carriers or independent adjusting firms, they used to have like these core training programs, large classes, and I think that's what you're kind of talking about, like that it can't just all be online, watch these videos, because you need that human factor, that support. Because if you're just sitting here clicking through like coursework, it's very isolating, right? And you need that human element.
Yep.
What do you see in the future, like why wouldn't a Travelers or State Farm, or like why wouldn't they just try to buy your company? And because like you have an established training program.
I mean, they might be interested in that, but for the most part, carriers, they have people that are way smarter than me. They have systems that they could build that are probably better than what we've built in theory, right? And so I don't know whether a carrier ever would be interested or whether an IA firm would ever be interested in that. But I think for the most part, anybody can do this. It's just hard, right? We don't do anything that's secret. We say our secret sauce is we care a whole lot. That's really it. We just care for the individual, that they're successful. And so we pursue that with everything. Like if somebody's calling me and I'm in Signal, right? That's the caveat. If I'm in Signal, I'm going to answer that phone and try to talk with them and give them the answer they need, even though we have a community that they could get the answer to, even though it's an entire huge searchable database like the wiki of adjusting in there, you could find the answer. We want to make sure that person's successful, because in that moment, if they can be successful, then the rest of the time they're going to take care of themselves, and they're going to feel better about every decision they make, because I know they got my back. I can walk through this. And if I really get stuck, I can call them. I can get on the community. I can get help. But there's really nothing secret about what we do. It's just caring a whole lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what do you like with the community aspect, like as far as, yeah, make a new video of kind of like if there's a common theme or question that's been coming up, kind of make that new video, add it to the curriculum. But then for as far as like touch points for the mentorship group, or is this weekly scheduled calls, bi-weekly scheduled calls, or is it just kind of one off as you go?
It's nonstop. I wish it was a weekly, monthly, one-time thing. It's not. It's nonstop. So every morning we're grading homework, we're assigning homework, we're giving feedback. This is what you did right. This is what you did wrong. Here's how I'd handle this claim scenario that you just asked a question about. We basically have our own social media network. It's not on LinkedIn, it's not on Facebook, it's our own private thing. But we have that to where people can ask questions and not feel stupid. If a carrier or an I firm was in there and could see what they were asking, like, how come you don't know how to do that? We all have stupid questions, but you want that safe place to do it. So we are literally getting dozens and dozens of questions every day in our community that we're answering as fast as possible. And if I don't get to it because I'm in the middle of Helena and my Starlink's not working, we have other people who will pick it up and get it. And we have other people in the community who have dealt with that same situation before that will answer it. Even if one of our mentors doesn't get to it in an hour or something, somebody's going to answer that question, usually really fast.
And what do you kind of see as far as like the age groups or like generations of people kind of being in these programs? Or have you seen kind of like an influx of, people my age, early 20s, kind of coming into these programs instead of college or out of college? Or what do you kind of like, how, like, are people starting their careers here? Or is it, oh, I tried something else for a couple of years and then they're coming and going through this curriculum?
Rarely is it the young people. I can tell you that. Insurance, as you know, it's probably why you do what you do, why Tony does what he does. There are not enough young people who know about this industry. No matter how much we talk about it, it can't compete with TikTok singing videos. It just doesn't. It sounds more attractive to be a TikTok star or to be a football player or to do anything other than insurance, right? Insurance just sounds terrible on the surface until you dig deep. And so we don't see a lot of young people. Occasionally we will if they hear about it from somebody in a bar or their uncle did it, right? But for the most part, who we see coming into this industry in mass is retired police officers, ex-military, nurses, teachers, people who are just done with whatever career they were in, whether it's COVID that they don't want to go back, or whether it's they're just retiring and they want another part-time to full-time job to keep them occupied. They heard about it through the years. They thought it was interesting. And then now's the time to do it. And so they're coming in. So that's most of who we see is anybody from 40 to, I've had 75-year-olds in my classes learning how to do adjusting. And so we have had some 19 and 20-year-olds who are related to people, but for the most part, that's not who we're seeing come in on their own.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and definitely unfortunate of people my age not really knowing about insurance. But you're completely right. That's why we're here doing stuff like this. So just a question for you is, what is something that you wish you knew, like, or advice to yourself when you were first starting your career? Like, how would you have looked for like this opportunity or the flexibility? Just kind of some advice to your former self.
What I would say to my former self, there's a lot I would want to say, but I think the summation of it would be, it's not about money. Um, so for me, where I'm at today, the biggest change I've seen is that money's great, but you find out very quickly when you do get money, if you get money, that it doesn't hold the promise you thought it would. And so you really have to look at it as a balance. You have to have money to survive. You have to have money to get where you want in life. But a lot of times we sacrifice the other aspects of our lives to get that, like time. We give up all our time to chase money, especially in independent adjusting. It's like a hamster wheel. Like, it's the new claim. I have to get it. We give up our energy, our health, so I consider health a part of our energy, where if I'm eating garbage every day because I don't want to take the time to eat proper, and to learn about health or to learn how to keep myself healthy, and I'm not exercising, well, then I'm going to get sick. And that's all for money. And then, same thing with relationships. I've been through some really rough patches in my life because I didn't care about people. I only cared about the money and what I was pursuing. And I just blocked everything off. And I always say I was emotionally just vacant. Like, and then to wake up and realize, like, okay, I got what I thought I was chasing and what I wanted. And I've done multiple six figures. I've had great runs. I've loved I now look at I'm living right what most people would say is a dream. But if I don't have time, energy, or relationships, none of it matters. And so that's what I would tell my former self. Make sure you have all those things, not just money. So once you get your money and you're surviving, the way to thrive is to stop chasing money. It might still keep coming in, but go chase these other things. Get your time back, get your energy back. Focus on those things. You got the roof, you got the food, great. Focus on your relationships and these other aspects of life.
Yeah, no, definitely that makes a lot of sense. And something you kind of said stuck out to me, just as far as time. Like, sure, you can make in like six figures plus on your nice, comfortable like salary job and have that like structure and just long term outlook. But then, as far as if you're going in the office 5 days a week, it's 30 plus minutes there, 30 plus minutes back. You're packing a lunch, or you're having to buy lunch, and like you said, as far as
And
health.
what do you do with that money? What
Yeah.
do you do with that money when you're miserable and you don't have time? You spend it on stuff you think is going to make you happy. You buy the newest Tesla. Not that I'm against Tesla, but I'm just saying you buy a Tesla when you probably shouldn't. You spend it on other fancy things that you think is going to be fun in your one day off a week or whatever it is, and you find out, hey, this really didn't do what I thought it would do. And what I think we're really searching for in life is really those relationships. But you can't have relationships if you don't have time, because they take time, they take energy, and they do take money sometimes. But relationships, I think, are the big key thing that most of us just ignore a lot of times. We get it right early on in life. Even in college, you kind of get it right. You like start spending time with people. You have your